Hello, this is the Mae B Mindful Podcast, and I am your host, Hannah Mae. I'm a mother of 6, conscious birth instructor and educator, spiritual growth facilitator, and certified hypnotist. This podcast is about inspiring hope, expanding awareness and consciousness in order to revolutionize the way we live and experience our lives. You can expect thought-provoking episodes each week spanning a range of topics, drawing from both my own journey of transformation and healing and working with others. I hope you find this podcast to be informative, refreshing, illuminating, and instrumental in your own soul's evolution and growth. Let's jump right in. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Mae, and this week's episode is on compassion. Why is it the hardest thing in the world? But then it's the most beautiful and most profoundly transformative thing. That's probably why it's so hard, because it's like the most worth doing and accessing and getting into that state. It's so worth it. So I just want to talk about that a little bit, because I like talking about difficult stuff and unraveling it and finding a way through it and recognizing the importance of it. So we're going to touch on a few different things. Compassion is one of the characteristics that is aligned with the true self, the higher self. It is the thing that bridges the gap. It is the thing that allows us to move out of victimization. It is the thing that allows us to heal. It is the thing that allows us to reconnect with our fellows, with other people, that puts us back into contact with humanity when that's been severed, when connection is severed. But compassion is really the thing that transforms, that heals. It's very connected with anger, with sadness, with joy, because it's the thing that allows us to make our way either through those things, to resolve those things. It's not the prize, but it's the action that gets us the prize. It's this thing where you can have an ideal, a philosophy, a belief, a value around, and just say, I'm supposed to be compassionate, therefore I forgive, okay? But what if you just don't forgive? What if you're angry and your anger is too great to just allow you to bypass it? So the beautiful thing about compassion and the journey there is we actually do have to pass through and experience and acknowledge our anger and resolve and feel our anger, or grieve or let go in order to get to that compassion. And so compassion is also the mechanism that allows that release, allows us to feel safe, to be seen, to be in connection with. Richard Schwartz, I don't know why that Schwartz is such a hard name for me to say. He came up with the model back in the 80s, my decade, of IFS, internal family systems, parts work therapy. If you don't know about it, it's incredible. If you do know about it, you know what I'm talking about. He refers to the 8 C's of being in the true self, the 8 characteristics that really define and embody true self. And the first of which is compassion. I'll read you the other ones just because why not? Compassion, right? The ability to be kind to oneself, which obviously is therefore going to be able to be extended to others once you can do that for yourself. If you can't do that for yourself, most likely it's going to be difficult to reflect that in your other relationships. It's gonna kind of eke out somewhere. But if you do have it towards yourself, it's going to very naturally be able to be extended to the people in your life around you. Confidence, being able to stay present. Courage, having the strength to face difficult situations. And courage, interestingly, is the thing that allows us to elevate and raise our energy level. Once we step into that, that's where we gain some momentum. And our whole frequency is elevated, and it measures a lot higher than some of the lower states. That is the place of transition. I don't want to go too far into it, but David Hawkins, who wrote The Map of Consciousness, explains how when we step into the vibration of courage, it measures at 200, and that is the level which allows us to really gain some momentum in our energy, elevate our state and allow us to really step back into connection with the human race, as a productive member of society. And anything under that is pretty low frequency. And he uses addicts and alcoholics as an example on either side of that, and how courage is that turning point. Anyways, that's courage. That's another chat for another day. Creativity, using imagination to access new experiences, feelings, and thoughts. I mean, if you think about like creativity, right? Obviously, you're in your true self. Connectedness, feeling connected at the mind, body, to the mind, body, and heart. Calmness, a quality of the true self. Interesting. Clarity, a quality of the true self. Curiosity, a quality of the true self. Clarity is always amazing to me because that comes as a result of accessing our true self, of accessing our inner resources. We get back that which we already have within us, which we have separated from or severed that connection with true self. And then curiosity is amazing to me because the moment that we can get curious in a situation, in any situation, which can be also counterintuitive when we're in like an automatic response, autopilot mode of conditioned responses, fear-based responses. Curiosity is the thing that allows us to step onto a new path. It really opens up a door that we had not seen before we like calmed the hell down and got curious. And it allows for exploration, and it allows for a new experience. It allows us to step out of fear. But really, we could go on about all these, but really what I want to talk about is compassion, because that is the thing that really allows us to bridge the gap within ourself, to come back into alignment with ourself, to be able to hold and nurture ourself, to hear ourself. It is the thing that heals us on a deep core level. It is the thing that when we provide for somebody else as a result of being able to do that for ourselves, we can allow and support others in their healing. And everybody has the innate ability to heal, but sometimes we need space held for that. And sometimes there's no one to hold it, and we have to be able to hold it down for ourselves. But once we have learned to do that for ourselves, we can be incredibly instrumental in like purpose in a purpose-filled life of being able to hold that space for somebody else. So it's an incredible tool. So forgiveness, you could have the Christian value is like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Okay, good idea. Like, how the hell do you do it? It's easier said than done sometimes. And why is it so difficult? Why? Because it means we have to, oftentimes, it means a few things. It means we have to come out of the victim role, which is that we don't necessarily want to do, because it can be so much easier to feel anger. You kind of got to do it if you want freedom. I mean, you don't got to do it. You don't. But you can ask yourself a couple questions. Do you want to stay in bondage to your anger or the thing that's blocking you from compassion? Just to be clear, what anger does, what resentment does, is it blocks you in relationship with others. It blocks you in relationship with yourself, and it blocks you in your spiritual connection and that which you conceive or perceive God to be. I mean, it's kind of important. What happens when a child is disconnected? What happens when a child is disconnected? They become extremely dysregulated. They start acting a little crazy. They start acting a little irrational. They start throwing shit. They start hitting. They start crying. They become disconnected. They lose their energy. They lose their joy. They become angry. Like the whole array of things that can happen. And how is it any different from you as an adult? It's not. It really just dampens the fire for life in us. So yeah, it's worth doing. We are made for connection. We're made for community, and that is how we thrive. And some of the people I know and I know this because I've had them in my life, everybody has, that present the opportunity for compassion are, some of the greatest teachers. These are some of the most infuriatingly wonderful freaking teachers, okay? Because they can make it hard to find compassion for them. It can be very challenging. It is so beneficial. It's so beneficial in your family life, because when we're not in compassion, we're not in true self. when we're not seeing things from that place of truth, it's actually a part of us that's being affected, that's reacting. Okay, a younger part of ourselves, whatever, a wounded part of ourselves, something that's being affected, that's causing us to have a heightened, narrowed focus on this thing that's causing us agitation, dysregulating us. And when we don't see correctly and we don't have that clarity, then we are not seeing people in their true light. We are seeing a manifestation, and they might be way out of line. We are allowing that to cloud our view and get zoom in on that and get real up close to where we don't see them anymore. We only see a manifestation of a buildup of their negative emotion. So yeah, it might be really disagreeable. It might be something that you have to get away from. It could be harmful. It could be toxic. You might have to sever connection with that person in order to protect yourself, in order to preserve your own well-being. That's okay. Compassion doesn't mean you let them into your life and go cuddle with them, right? It means you see the truth of who they are underneath their asshole behavior or whatever they're doing that you've deemed is asshole behavior, whether it is or isn't, I don't know. Because that's also subjective. Just gonna say, it could be based on something that you're hypersensitive to, if that's something unhealed in you. So it's all an arrow that points back to you to figure out your stuff and get clear. But when we see somebody in their true light, and I'm just going to talk about a child for a second, because with a child, you love them, who they are at their core, especially if it's your child, and you've just lost them for a moment. Okay, you've just lost them for a moment there because they're acting a little insane, or they're being rude, or whatever. Or they're having an entitled, tantrumy moment. That doesn't make them a bad child. That makes them a human who's having an emotional experience in that moment and is needing help, right? Needing your help if you're the parent. And so how do you best support that child? You see them in their true light. You cut through the bullshit for them. You see them in their true light. You see them in that light. You hold space for that. Yes, you might have to have a boundary, right? And not let them do something to cause you or themselves harm. But you believe in them. You become their ally. You hold that space for them. And by holding that space for them, it gives them permission, because they take your cues, to step back into that, to step back into their true self. It says, I love you no matter what, because that's what unconditional love is. Okay, it says, I love you no matter what. And then they have permission to do that, and they change, and you can be at peace again. But we do have these hiccups, of course, especially with your kids. They come up all the time. And in a relationship with your children, it's so important to keep sight of that so that we can continue to support them in being their best true selves. Because if somebody loses sight of themselves and who they are, they can feel incredibly lost. That can be incredibly scary. So with other people, where it may be a little harder to exercise that, even though they might not be continually triggering you as much if they're not in your face all the time, it is still extremely beneficial for you and for them. But let's just focus on you, because you're the one that needs to have a nicer experience with it, right? I had this experience where I had somebody that was very unwell in my life, and I didn't really want to be around them. And it felt really toxic. And it was always really uncomfortable. But I had to sort of find a way to navigate it when I did have to be around this person. And I had this really incredible experience where I was doing my 7th path practice, which is the self-hypnosis practice that I teach. And it's a series of recognitions that you repeat. You put yourself into hypnosis. It's really powerful. P.S. Stay tuned for dates to be announced to teach that. But there is one of the recognitions is around forgiveness. And I, in a meditation, was able to see this person as a child. And I've worked with clients on this, and also supported clients who have felt really blocked with anger and doing forgiveness work with people that they thought that they could never, ever forgive, with the harms that they had caused them. the one thing that allowed them to see them in their true light was actually regressing back and seeing them as a child and seeing the truth of maybe what they had been through that made them this way, that caused them this pain, that caused them to act this way. This has to be done subconscious. We can't really do this with the conscious mind. It kind of bounces off. It really has to go deeper. So when we go subconscious and we do this work, it's really powerful because we can shift the way we see somebody, and like the way our soul sees their soul, essentially, is the way that I look at it. But I did this piece of work myself, in my own work with myself, with this person. This person had targeted me and said and done some not very nice things. And I'm a very energetically sensitive person. And it just felt like a minefield entering back into any sort of engagement with them. And so I really needed a lot of grace. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this without it being such an awful experience, right? Like, how am I just going to be comfortable in this? So I did this practice, and this really magical, amazing thing happened that was not intentional, but I was already on a journey in my subconscious. And so I went to this place where I really truly saw her as a child. I saw her and I felt her as a child. And I loved her in that moment so much. And what I was able to do was sort of compartmentalize that vision that I had, that connection that I had made with her. And I walked into that situation and I saw her in that way and in that way only. I was changed because of it. Okay. I changed. The interaction was completely different. There was no weirdness. There was no residual weirdness after, because I can generally sense if there's weirdness getting kicked up after, even if I'm not with that person. And it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And I know that that's because I saw her differently and I carried myself differently as a result of that. I had a change within myself. And this is the amazing thing. When we change, nobody else has to change, but I swear, everybody changes. It's the most magical, incredible thing. And so this is really one of the benefits of that. It just allows us to do life with more ease, and yeah, we're always going to get challenged. There's always going to be somebody that's going to piss us off because we're always a work in progress. And so anything anybody else does, of course, really doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It has everything to do with us and everything to do with the way that it's affecting us. And so when we are confronted with this stuff, we're able to move into it. We usually get to something in us that is asking for compassion and love and care. If we're able to show that to ourselves, then we are able to generally extend that, like I said, to others. And therein lies our freedom. And so it has to be authentic, right? Like, it can't just be a bypass and like, I'm just going to avoid my anger or my sadness or my grief and just be compassionate. That's not authentic. That's not real. And it really only carries that energy and has that transformative power if it's authentic, because truth is always going to be, authenticity is always going to be the loudest, most effective thing, most powerful thing in the room. And it just carries an expansive vibration and energy with it that has so much power, more than we can see with the human eye. And so it's always going to outshine the imposter solution. The bypass, the pretend compassion and forgiveness, that's the imposter solution. That's like the pretend solution. That's like, I want to have it, but I don't. I mean, this is not easy work, because if you are going to get there, then you have to feel some things. But again, these things, these feeling states, these opportunities, when we feel those things, how do we comfort? How do we console? It's through compassion. So it allows us to actually refine that tool, that ability, that gift to ourselves. And so back to needing to have boundaries for self-preservation for yourself. If you're dealing with somebody who's toxic, for example, who you can't let in your life, or even if it's somebody that you really love, that you have extreme disappointment around losing, it is easier, okay, to sever that connection with somebody through anger by cutting off and avoiding than it is to really find compassion and let that person go with love. So if you've been harmed by somebody that, yes, maybe you're angry on the surface, but underneath it at its core is deep, deep sadness, disappointment. if you can move through that process and support yourself through the grief of that, then you can more effectively let them go with love. And that's incredible because there's real freedom in that. There's no freedom in just ignoring somebody and shutting it out, because what I found that it invariably will come back. In the case of rage, like extreme rage, there's usually underneath that extreme fear, extreme terror. That's usually a terrified child underneath that. Doesn't mean you have to subject yourself to the psycho who's like raging and be like, there, little one. That might not be smart, but to be able to see through that harmful behavior or rage is helpful for your own healing or your own way through your own, like processing your own trauma, right? And there is a lot of unaware, sick people causing harm to others, maybe to you, or just that you witness. There's a lot of injustice. And so some of that anger that's going to come up is righteous anger. But usually righteous anger has deep compassion at the base of it, at the foundation of it, which is what will drive you into some kind of action that might be needing to be taken. And so that righteous anger has a place, but the compassion for the cause is usually what drives you. If it's compassion that's driving you, which is, like I was saying, in alignment with true self, then you can really trust that what you're doing is actually for good, rather than like self-seeking, needing to self-soothe. It's not about you at that point. It's about the greater good. That's kind of a separate thing, but I just wanted to throw that caveat in there. In the case of a situation which is an ongoing thing with your spouse, for example, you have constant opportunity to see this person in their true light, because depending on what's coming up for you and what's coming up for them, and relationship is just this wonderful minefield of like triggers to like, you just like trigger the shit out of each other. There's so much opportunity for transformation and growth, and to find your way through conflict with the practice of compassion by really getting curious and really saying like, why is this person doing this? Like, this person you might feel like you're under attack, or you might feel judged or criticized. And it's so easy to get reactivated and triggered by this person who's most likely like they know all your hot spots and all your buttons, and you know all theirs. And a lot of times it's with the people that are closest to us that, of course, we have the most opportunity to practice this with. And you can see through some of the most childlike behavior. And in a marriage, right, you're going to see each other at your worst. Like, if anybody's going to see you have a tantrum, it's going to be your partner. I have had it instantly transform the situation when I have said, instead of reacting, for example, to even just a small comment, if I go into victim and like defense and I'm like all of a sudden ready to fire back, then that can create more problems. If I can pause and at least, even if I'm not feeling compassion in that moment, if I can pause and say, wow, is everything okay? Or is there something, or get curious, like, is there something wrong? Or is everything okay? Or are you okay? Just that simple question, are you okay, has completely shifted the whole conversation, because it's like maybe that person opens up and says, okay, no, I'm really like stressed out about this, or I'm struggling with this. And then you're able to not take it so personally and move past, and it doesn't have to ruin the day for you or ruin that moment for you. So that's like people that you love, right? In a situation where you're enraged by something, or you feel really, truly that you've been harmed, the thing that I have found most effective with that is to just move into acceptance with how I'm actually feeling underneath that outrage, and show myself some compassion. And then, when I meet my own needs with this, I'm okay again. Like, once the need has been met. So that can be helpful. So basically, it allows for healing and transformation. When Mary Magdalene was about to be stoned to death,
because she was a prostitute. She was possessed by demons. She was mentally ill. She was being driven. And Christ saw her and took pity on her. He drew a line in the sand and he said, hey guys, if anybody here has no sin, he who is without fault, let them throw the first stone. Go right ahead. And of course, they dropped their stones because truth cut through their hypocrisy and their judgment and their anger, and they walked away. Mary Magdalene became one of Christ's closest friends. She was one of the three people that was faithful to him and did not abandon him in his death and passion and suffering. It was her, the Blessed Mother, and Saint John, the Apostle. She was healed. She transformed. She was set free. And she became a loyal and faithful follower. And it was that compassion and that love that healed her. And this is the example that Christ left, you know? It's not that he didn't have boundaries sometimes. There were times where he was like, nope, see ya, peace out. And he would bail when there was no point in sticking around. So even when he was firm, he was kind, he was calm. I mean, he definitely embodied compassion, you know, and he was always in alignment with that. And this drew people to him and he healed them. As a parent, as somebody that supports somebody in their healing work, when I have love for somebody and I see their suffering, and when I really see them, I can hold a space for them. And that space allows for healing. So as a healer, I don't heal anybody. Nobody heals anybody else. To be a healer simply means you are a conduit of healing. And like I was saying, as a parent with my children or with anybody that I love, if they come to me with pain, if I can really get present with that and try and understand, get curious, move into compassion, feel them and sit with them and see them, then something really incredible happens. There's a shift. When I can really get present with them, acknowledge, reflect back to them their pain so that they feel seen, heard, and understood, they're able to dissolve whatever that negative buildup of pain is that then can set them free. So, anyways, just a little chat about compassion. There's so much more to say on it and other facets that I didn't look at with this, but this is what came to mind. So I love you guys. Carry on until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. For more information, resources, and exclusive content, visit our website at maybemindful.com or go ahead and follow us over on Instagram at maybemindful. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please give me a follow, screenshot the episode, and go ahead and tag me until next week when I bring you another thought-provoking and inspiring topic. Until then,